So I put something up on the screen. Can you see that? I don't know when you spotlight me if you could see that because
Yes.
I see everything different in the background. So namaste, everyone. It's beautiful to be with you. I started reading this book by Eric Butterworth, Discover the Power Within You. Again, I've read it so many times. And I just got re-inspired. I often, you pick up something that is a Unity classic, and it has such incredible wisdom for us that it really re-inspires us with the powerful teachings and the powerful principles that have come to us through Unity. And while there's many, many wonderful things in this book, this one particular couple sentences really stuck out for me, and I would just like to read it aloud and then hopefully make some sense out of what I'm going to say as it relates to my talk title, which is Pray and Tie Up Your Camel. So Eric Butterworth reminds us, for every spiritual concept that excites you, get still and reflect quietly upon it until something happens in you. It is the releasement of this innate potential that is the object of all study. The words of the teacher, the book, even the words of the Bible are not the object of your search, but the means to the end of a personal revelation. I thought it was wonderful as I listened to our daily word today, this idea of being able to realize not only what is going on for us in the world, but who we are in the world. And for me, this is such an embedded principle and practice of Unity teachings. So what I'd like to do is kind of tie up my talk title with the teachings of Unity in a way. My talk title is Pray and Tie Up Your Camel. And actually, that somehow is how it translates in my mind, but the actual saying that is quoted is trust in God and tie up your camel. And it's an ancient saying that was attributed actually to Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, as he was watching a Bedouin just leave his camel without tethering it. And he asked the Bedouin, why would you do this? And the Bedouin replied, I'm putting my trust in Allah. I have no need to tie up my camel. And the Prophet Muhammad then replied, tie up your camel and place your trust in Allah. And I think often when we think of this, or if you've never thought of it before, the first thing that comes to mind is this idea that, yes, we can pray for things, but we also have to take action in the outer. We can't just be sitting on our cushion and constantly expecting God to do something for us without taking action in the outer. And there's that old story about the man sits on the roof of his house and the helicopter comes by and he says, oh, no, you don't need to rescue me. I'm waiting for God. And the boat comes by and the people go, come down, we'll take you out of the flood. Oh, no, I'm waiting for God. It's this crazy idea that somehow the things that are happening in the outer and the way that we can engage with the world is not necessary if we do our prayer work. And this is where, for me, the power of Unity really shines. And I really want to anchor this for all of us. So I put together kind of a little different way of Unity's core principles. And I know that Marilyn shared this at the beginning of our time together, but I thought it would be nice for you to visually see this as I'm going through our time together. So this is principle number 1, and that is that God is all there is and present everywhere. This is the force of love and wisdom that underlies all of existence. There is nowhere that God is not. We all know this. We know it as a concept. Do we realize it? Do we see this and experience it in our life beyond just the conceptual of the idea that there is nowhere that God is not? The second principle is that human beings are divine at their core, and therefore they are inherently good. Now, this concept is such a powerful principle for us to really anchor into. You know, in my exploration through the past 15 years in India, they have a very similar understanding of what we would call the indwelling God or the divine within. They call this indwelling presence the Antariyanam. And the idea is that we each have this aspect of the divine that we uniquely are able to connect to in our own special way. We may know that presence and make that connection through Jesus or through Buddha or through an experience of light or expanded consciousness. But we all know that we connect to something greater in a very unique and powerful way. And that is this aspect of our divinity, that we are made out of God's stuff. The third principle, I often just call it the law of mind action, which is that thoughts and mind create after their kind. And as I spoke last month, it's not just about thoughts that are held in the mind and the activity of mind and the brain, but literally the feelings and activity of the heart, that there's this wisdom in the heart, that connecting with the mind really outpictures in the world, as whether it's our feeling nature or our thinking nature. So this third principle, thoughts have creative power to determine events and to attract experiences. Such an important thing for us to always really be mindful of. And then our fourth principle of prayer and meditation. Prayer and meditation keep us aligned with this one great power in the universe. And I think this is such an important thing for us to be mindful of. And hopefully, as we explore a little bit more about tying up our camel, we'll come to understand how incredibly important and powerful this fourth principle of prayer and meditation is for us in our lives. And the fifth principle, you know, I used to always say, to know these things and to not realize them and do them and act through them is to not even know them. You could talk about them all day long, but if they're not literally insights that you experience, understand, and act from, you might as well not know them. It's just like reading the book and going, oh yeah, I know that, you know, and then going out and doing something that doesn't align with the wisdom that you say you know at all. So it's not enough to understand spiritual teachings. We must live the truth as we know it. Such a powerful thing. And this to me is what is such a gift from our unity teachings. Now, if I look at the idea of pray and tie up your camel, I can look at it from the level of these 5 core teachings and say, well, yes, I have to live these principles. I have to know that God is everywhere present. I have to know that there's a divine within me. I have to know that my thinking is really picturing out into the world what's going to happen in my life. And I have to know that I have to constantly be mindful through prayer and meditation, and then take what I get out into the world. That could be tying up my camel. That could be kind of the end result of that process of tying up my camel. But there's this other wisdom that I think comes through if we understand a little bit more about this metaphor, let's say, of pray and tie up my camel. And this is where I had a lot of fun looking into this particular saying. So I love something that was said in Eric Butterworth's book. He said, Jesus was the Christopher Columbus of the soul. Like Jesus was this explorer of the soul. And as an explorer of the soul, he knew that our mind is this bridge between the activity that we have in the outer, in our world, our independent world, and the infinite powerful presence that is everywhere within and without. That this activity of mind, and again, when I say mind, I'm also talking about the embodiment of the intelligence of the heart. And so I thought the image here of the camel was such an interesting thing. I'm going to just show you a few images, and then I'd like to get off there so I can actually see you all, because I can't see you here. But one of the things that's interesting about camels is that they're tied to one another when they go on a journey. And, we're all on a journey. We're on a spiritual journey, just like, Christopher Columbus, then Jesus, the Christopher Columbus of the soul. We're all on this spiritual journey of our own individual soul's unfoldment. And so this metaphor and of the camel caravan is quite an interesting one for us to look at a little deeper level. If you'll see these camels, they're all tied one to the other. They actually have a tie from their harness. There's a ring that ties to the next camel on their noses. And it's apparently these camel caravans run through the desert. There can be as many as 16 camels tied together. And then there's another caravan of 16 camels tied together. So I was thinking about how if we look at this idea of the camel being an aspect that we carry as our mind, what if the camel could represent your mind? The camel of your mind. And what is the camel carrying? The camel of your mind, and even the camel that's carried in collective consciousness. So thinking about a camel, a camel is carrying burdens. The camel carries the burdens on these long and extraordinary journeys. And I think about ourselves in the world right now. I mean, we are in amazing times in the world. So many things are up for change, transformation. So many of us are feeling this kind of inner divide that, even was something that was very present in the time of Jesus. Clearly he lived through that. And as we feel that and we know that, part of what's going on is we carry some of these, literally these burdens in consciousness that are part of the collective. We carry thought forms that are part of the collective. Just like the camel, we have this interesting capacity. I did a little research on camels. I thought, what the heck? How did I ever come up with this idea? But when I looked into it, it's very interesting because I used to think the camel's water was in his hump, but the camel's water is not in his hump at all. A camel actually has the capacity to drink anywhere between 20 and 35 gallons of water at a stretch. And they carry this water and can travel long journeys. They can travel for as much as 5 days in hot weather without having to have another drink of water. And what it made me realize is how long I can carry things in my consciousness without really re-examining what's going on, without looking to see what it is, what's going on up there. I'm just, I'm telling myself a story. I'm believing something that I picked up in the news or something that someone told me, and I'm carrying it just like the camel, like a burden in my life. The thing about the camel that's so interesting, the hump of the camel is actually made up of fat, which is like a storage facility for him. I mean, I have a little of camel fat on me now from COVID that I've been carrying around. I could probably not eat for a few days and it wouldn't be a bad thing. But the camel actually uses what's there to nourish itself as it goes through this long, long journey without having water, without having other food. And I think many of us, we kind of do the same thing in our life without examining what it is that we're carrying. And this is where, for me, the interesting idea of the lining up of the inner thoughts that we are carrying becomes such a powerful thing. I thought, if I could see that I've aligned myself, I've literally tied myself to multiple thought forms that are weighting me down, that are telling me things that are not the truth of who I am or who is the truth out in the world. And I may be praying to the divine. I may be asking for help. I may be asking for support. I may be asking for guidance. But at the same time, I haven't aligned my inner world to connect with higher consciousness because of the things that I've been carrying in consciousness about myself, perhaps for lifetimes, about the way the world works, from perhaps other people in the world. And so this idea of pray and tie up your camel for me became one of the only way I'm able to really put prayer into practice, the only way I'm really able to fully connect with the presence of the divine, that intelligence of the divine that's everywhere present, is if my inner state is properly aligned, knowing the truth of who I am, knowing that God is everywhere present, unity principle number one, knowing that I am made in the image and likeness, and so are all the people in my world, and knowing that my thoughts and the feelings that I have are what are creating and outpicturing as the world I see before me. And knowing not only, and this is where I really tuned into Eric Butterworth's book on Discover the Power Within You, because his book, as he begins with helping us understand the incredible power that we all have within us, his book, written in 1968, is about giving us that insight that we are the salt of the earth, as Jesus said, that awareness that we have to let our light shine, no matter how small we might think we are, like the salt of the earth, that little tiny seasoning of salt is going to change everything. And the key thing here, and this is where I think our unity principles, it just excites me so much, that when we begin to understand and align our thoughts, really line our thoughts up with these principles that we know, and we begin to not only align them, connect them with the powerful presence of the divine, and then move into the fifth principle, which is, I don't have to just know these things, I have to take action in these things. I have to move out in the world. I have to take action. Whatever the action is, it's something that's aligned with this deep knowing about the presence and power of God in everyone, in ourselves, and that the thoughts I'm thinking, they're not the burdens that I've been carrying. They're not the burdens that the collective consciousness has been carrying, perhaps for lifetimes. Not the burdens of an old Christianity. You know, this is where it's so exciting to be a unitic. You know, it's over 100 years old. It hasn't really been fully, in some sense, discovered and embodied in the world, but each one of us know this is the truth of who we are. And as we begin to carry it forth in our lives and to share it not as a, proselytizer, but simply as a demonstration of one who carries life from a place of joy, a place of love, a place of knowing that we are aligned with this divine presence in every moment in our life. And we don't allow the heaviness of the burdens that we've been carrying that might be outpicturing in the physical body in certain ways for us right now. It might be outpicturing in struggles in our relationship. It might be outpicturing in something that's keeping us from expressing what we want to call it our truth, but it's only our truth if we've already ticked off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of knowing that we're fully aligned with these 5 principles. I think I kind of got activated to do this talk on pray and tie up your camel because I was talking to a friend of mine who she's not getting vaccinated, and and that's her choice. It's her choice. But she had this story that was, well, my divine has told me this, and I cannot go against what my divine tells me. I have to listen to my divine, and it's my divine. And it's so interesting because I wasn't going to try to make any case for it. And there may be some of you who made a choice that you don't want to have a vaccination because of health issues or whatever. But I realized sometimes we can take a position on something and call it my divine's position and get locked into that without really lining up what's going on inside of us and finding the clarity around what is really my truth. Is it my truth because it's my ego's truth? And it's because it's carrying some old pattern that I've been carrying as a child, maybe, or just as a part of who I show up in the world and how I show up in the world, not wanting to be too big, not wanting to be too small, no, not wanting to say something that's going to hurt someone else's opinion of me. Anyway, I just noticed that in that moment, as I listened to my friend really use her divine as her kind of defense mechanism against having to take any kind of action. I thought, it's so important that we get clear of all of these kind of, I would almost call them false gods, but patterns within our thinking that are not aligned with the presence and the power of the divine and the presence and the power of who we are, and our awareness that all the thoughts that we're thinking really impact the way our energy field shows up in the world. So having said that, I'd love to I'd love to talk to you guys. That's the thing that's so hard about Zoom. I just love to be able to have some interaction here. And so I think I'm going to ask people maybe to just pop into the chat, since if we start doing this now, it could go on forever. But can you notice anything? And here, I'm going to put this up again because he's so cute. So do any of you notice yourself with a backpack like this camel? Do any of you have this kind of burden on your back that you've been carrying for a while? And just to be aware on the journey of what are some of the things that you've been carrying. And maybe it's time, to bend down and take them off, How long have you been carrying this burden? Just to be aware of this. She got an oh yeah. Oh yeah is good. I just want us to be aware of this, and not from a place of any sort of blame, shame, just to be aware of how we're contributing to the collective consciousness when we aren't willing to actually take a look at some of these things that we've been carrying that are part of that. It's part of the misalignment that we carry in consciousness when we're not connected to Christ consciousness, when we're not in that, when our inner camel, the thoughts that are each of those camels are not aligned with the presence and the power of God. Your parents' anger in the world. Oh my, yeah. Yeah, we don't need that. We don't need to carry somebody else's anger. Yeah, beautiful to be aware of that, So let's take a moment, and it's a vulnerable thing sometimes to be aware of these things, but let's take a moment to just go inward and take a look, because this is really the nature of who you are, from this most extraordinary heart space. And what we want to do is we want to clear this stuff out. We want to let the camel be released of his burden, so that this journey that we are on can be free of the burdens that we've been carrying for so long, that we can actually know that the thoughts we're thinking are creating what's going on in our world. And sometimes we have to look at the world to see what we're thinking because we can't remember. So I invite you to take a moment now just to close your eyes. And to tune into your heart. And as you connect with your divine, that God within, and breathing into your heart, take 3 continuous breaths, just breathing without any breath pause, just breathing in and exhaling 3 times. And knowing that God is all there is, that divine presence everywhere present, within and without, and that you not only carry the seed of God, but you are the hands and the feet of the divine, moment to moment. And as you align your heart and mind with the higher consciousness of the divine presence, you have the capacity to see anything that is not in alignment with your higher essence, with the truth of your being, with your health and vitality in the body, with right relationships, loving connections and joy, with a deep sense of purpose and meaning in your life, and with the capacity to make right choices and right decisions. And you do this moment to moment as you tune into the higher consciousness of your indwelling presence, of your God. As you talk to God and ask for support, for guidance, for release from things that are burdens in heart and mind. And as you meditate and open yourself to receive and allow in the stillness, that which is yours to receive from higher consciousness. And moment to moment, knowing as you tune into and align yourself with the presence of your God, you have the capacity to speak your truth, to take right action from the highest and best of who you are. And so we give thanks for this deep and powerful knowing. And so it is. So gently, as you're able to, bring your attention and your awareness back into your body and gently open your eyes and give thanks for this awareness we have of how easy we can move into this deep connection with the presence of the divine, how we can align ourselves and tie up our camel and be fully present on this deep and powerful spiritual journey. Blessings and namaste, everyone. And so we feel the deep and powerful knowing that we are one with the divine, we are one in God's life. And that as we align ourselves with the power and the presence of this knowing, body, mind, and spirit, we co-create a world that is filled with love, that is filled with peace, that is filled with health and vitality and grace for all beings. And for this knowing, as we pray and tie up our camel, we are grateful. We say, thank you, thank you, thank you, God.